One summer day, a man named John Randolph was hiking through a remote forest in Colorado when he began to smell something terrible. Intrigued, he followed the smell until it brought him to this clearing, and in the clearing, John saw what looked like an old campsite. Now, John is out in the middle of nowhere, and so the idea that somebody was camping out here in what looked like a long-term settlement was pretty bizarre to John. And so John walked into the clearing to see what was going on, and when he turned the corner and saw the ground in the middle of the campsite, he saw something that at first he couldn't even process. It was just so horrible, it just looked fake. But eventually he realized what he was looking at was real, at which point John turned around, sprinted out of there, and began screaming for help. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please invite the like button to go out to lunch with you, but once you get there, spend the entire time chewing as loudly as possible with your mouth wide open. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
Is it okay now, or
let's get into
is something
today's story.
buggy? No, it's not. It's okay.
On
It's
the freezing
clear,
cold night of
baby.
February 8th, 1874, a 65-year-old man named Israel Swan sat around this roaring fire with a big group of men inside of this valley in western Colorado. The men around the fire, including Israel, were all gold prospectors.
Okay, the main character
which
is
meant they
Israel,
traveled
not the main
western United
character,
States looking for
but
gold. But
the
over the
character.
past several weeks, this group of prospectors had been trapped in this valley because of all the terrible winter storms. They had these storms coming in that each time would dump
Winter
up to
storm.
6
Is
feet
it
of
snow?
But on this particular night, as Israel sat by the fire, enjoying the
Almost
flames
2
and hearing people
meters.
tell
What the fuck?
stories, one of Israel's friends, one of the other gold prospectors, whose name was Alfred Packer,
Real
he
photo
stood
of
up
Alfred
and basically
Packer.
pitched the whole group as to why they should come with him and leave the valley right now.
Yeah.
Basically, Alfred told the group that
Yeah, if someone just suddenly stood up and said something like this, I would fucking 100% get out. Okay, I would get out.
the weather is starting to turn a bit, it's not as bad anymore, the snow's starting to melt. And Alfred said, I know a pathway out of here that will take us out of this valley in just 2 weeks, and it'll bring us right to Breckenridge, Colorado, which was an area that was known by prospectors for having lots and lots of gold. And so Alfred's basically telling them, this is a win-win. We can get out of here sooner and we can get rich. After Alfred made this pitch, he sat back down and everybody just stayed quiet for a second.
I don't know,
And
gold
Israel, he kind of
prospector
looked
is
around
not
and watched
that
to see if
good.
anybody would take Alfred up on his proposition. Now, Israel knew, unlike him, most of the other prospectors didn't like Alfred. They said he was lazy and difficult. But Israel felt like that was really not the reason they did not like his friend. He believed the reason other people did not like Alfred was because Alfred had epilepsy, which meant he periodically had seizures. And because he had seizures, it kind of made him a liability for journeys like this.
Yeah.
Where, the whole group really needs to...
It's like a burden. I don't want to say it hurtfully, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's like a burden.
rely on everybody, and everybody needs to pull their own weight. And so they were kind of worried about a guy who at any moment could just become kind of useless because he was having a seizure. But for Israel, Alfred's epilepsy really didn't matter. He didn't feel like Alfred was some huge liability. He felt like Alfred was actually very smart and quite bold. And so for him to stand up and make this pitch just kind of felt like in keeping with who he was. He was somebody that wanted to get things done, and Israel liked that about him. However, just because Israel liked Alfred, that didn't mean he was just going to naturally go with Alfred and do his big plan, but he was at least thinking about it. And as Israel was weighing out the pros and cons of, whether or not he should go with Alfred, he happened to look across the fire and he saw one of the men, this really big guy, was sitting there
Not a real
really
photo of the man.
just shaking his head slowly back and forth, like, no, you guys can't be considering leaving early. And then the big guy stood up and he held out his hand right in front of Alfred, basically telling him, like, don't say another word. And then this guy, while still looking at Alfred, he said, if you leave right now, all of your friends will die. And then this big guy sat back down again, and then...
What? If you leave right now, all of your friends will die. But if you stay, you die with your friend. Is it it? Is that it? Or something? I don't know. I'm just dumb. Let's watch more.
Everybody around the fire just sat there really tense for a few seconds in total silence. The big man who had just spoken was not a gold prospector. He was actually very different than the rest of the people sitting around this fire. His name was Ure, and he was a Native American
Wait,
chief of the
so that means the photo earlier, it's just like a real photo one, right? Even though it's not real photo, it's similar.
Watch band of the Ute tribe. And Chief Ure had actually saved the lives of everybody, Israel and Alfred included, who was sitting around this fire.
Okay.
A few weeks earlier, this whole group of gold prospectors had wound up lost in this valley, which was the valley.
So he is their savior. From my point of view, he's trustworthy.
Where Chief Ure lived with his tribe, and he had found them stumbling around on the brink of death with all the snow coming down. And so Chief Ure and his people brought the prospectors some food and water. They helped them set up a campsite right near a river, and then Chief Ure told them to stay put in this campsite and ride out the winter, and then in the springtime, when the snow melts, it'll be safe for you all.
What the fuck? Let's wait until winter end and spring coming. Wow, that's fucking long.
To leave. Now, at first,
So
the gold
long.
prospectors were only thankful and just totally psyched that Chief Ure had found them and given them this campsite. I mean, this was great.
Yeah,
And so they had
it's
no
great.
problem agreeing to, wait until the spring to finally leave. But now, after several weeks of being kind of trapped in this camp, the whole
Oh,
group was really starting to get restless. They
It's
were
like-
worried if they
it's
didn't
like-
leave soon.
a little doubtful, and then you just can't take it anymore, right? Just can't take it anymore and break the group or maybe separate, and that's where the fucking doom is.
Soon, there'd be no more gold for them to mine. And for Israel specifically, there was even more pressure on him to go out and find gold because he had
Real
told his
photo of
family
gold
that this
ore.
would be his last treasure hunting adventure ever.
Oh,
and so he
shit.
really couldn't go home empty-handed. He literally needed the gold in order to continue to survive and take care of his family. So when Alfred stood up and broke the kind of tense silence and said to Chief Ure, thank you for your concern, but I am going to leave early.
Ah, shit, no, please don't. If your savior said you need to stay, you should stay. I don't know who you are, I don't know anything about you, but one thing that I know is don't be fucking ungrateful, okay? Don't be fucking ungrateful on the person who saved you.
And I just hope
Just listen to them. If they kill you, they kill you. If they save you, why would they even want to kill you?
others will come with me. At that point, Israel saw the conviction in Alfred, and Israel really felt like he did need to leave now. He needed to get that gold. And so Israel said, you know what? I'll go with you as well. And then after Israel said he would go, 4 other gold prospectors also volunteered to leave early with Alfred. Chief Ure could tell he was not going to change any of these guys' minds. And so even though he felt like this was a terrible idea, he shifted his focus from trying to stop them to just trying to give them as much information as he could about the area they were going to go into. And so he called all the
kind.
volunteers
What
who'd
the
be
fuck?
leaving
He's
early
fucking
over to
kind.
him.
They don't
And then
deserve
Chief
him.
Ure drew a map in the dirt on the ground, and he told Alfred and Israel and the other 4 volunteers that you have to follow the river out of here. It'll bring you to this mountain range called the San Juan Mountain Range. And you
Real
cannot
photo of the San Juan mountain range of Colorado. San Juan. Okay, silent J.
attempt to go over those mountains.
J
You will
is
not
silent.
make it. You got to follow that river and go around the mountain range. And then once you do, on the other side, there will be an outpost where you can stop, get supplies,
like a fucking
rest,
advice.
and then continue the rest of the way towards Breckenridge. And then after Chief Ure had explained all this, he made
Okay.
sure to mark an X on his dirt map exactly where the outpost would be. And then Chief Ure just turned around and walked over to his horse and rode away. And then shortly after that, Alfred, Israel, and the rest of the gold prospectors also turned in for the night. The next morning, Israel, Alfred, and the other 4 volunteers who were going to be going on this journey, they got up early and began packing up their stuff. And as they did, one of the other gold prospectors who
Oh,
had not
I
volunteered
thought they going to die in the night, but it's
go
okay.
with them, who would be staying in the valley until the springtime, he actually came forward and said he would help them carry their supplies as far as he could go, using his horse. But at some point he would need to stop, drop off their stuff, and then they would be on their own. And so the men were very thankful about this. And so shortly after eating breakfast, they were all ready to go and they hit the trail. As Israel and the rest of the prospectors began to hike their way
Not
up
a
and out
real
the
photo
valley,
of the
they began to
prospectors.
see off
Okay.
in the distance the huge jagged mountains of the San Juan mountain range, but they were careful to kind of veer closer to the north to stay along that river path because
Okay.
they knew they were not supposed to go up and over the mountains. And as Israel trudged through the snow in a line of men, he held on to a coffee pot, a metal coffee pot that he kept hot coals inside of. This not only kept his hands warm, but also if he ran out of matches,
Smart.
he could easily start a fire using the coals. It's a
Smart.
little trick he had learned. And so as he's clutching this magnificent warm coffee pot in the freezing cold weather, Israel heard someone walking up
Also,
behind
we
him.
just hit
So he
3
turned
view.
around and he
Wow.
saw it was
Great.
Alfred.
We
And
just
he
jumped
looked
from 1 to
totally
3.
miserable, way more miserable than Israel was. And so without even thinking about it, Israel just handed off his warm coffee pot to Alfred.
Oh yeah, for any of you who don't understand why I can read chat is because I have 2 phones. I don't have computer. I don't have computer yet. If I have it, I would be 3D, okay? 3D VTuber, but I don't. And also, okay, you can chat. You can chat. If you chat it, I know immediately because I have 2.
And Alfred took it and clutched it and was obviously so thankful. Now, none of these gold prospectors had struck it rich. They were all basically poor. But of all
Okay,
these gold prospectors, Alfred
kidding.
really had the least of all of them. And as a
Okay,
result,
the
Israel
brokiest.
kind of felt protective
Just
of
kidding
Alfred.
again.
And also, Alfred was half the age of Israel. Alfred was 30 years old. And so Israel kind of viewed Alfred
60
as
years
like a
old?
lost kid trying to find his way. Alfred had also confided in Israel that when the Civil War broke out in the United States, Alfred had attempted to join the Union Army
Oh
on two
yeah. For any of you who don't understand, there was a guy who wakes up and just tell everyone to leave, but there's no one who wants to leave. Okay, I think that was Alfred. Alfred was the everyone think he's the laziest, but he's not maybe, and he want to lead the group to safety, to get out of the valley that they are gold prospector get in. And it's in the winter time, so it snow for about, I don't know, 6 foot, maybe 6 foot. And the local said you should not get out of here because if you get out, maybe the people that are in the place who are staying are going to die. But he's not listening.
different occasions because he wanted to fight the slave-holding Confederate army. But in both
Okay.
cases, they kicked Alfred out for his epilepsy. But that had not stopped Alfred from tattooing on his arm
See?
his battalion information and his name. And unfortunately, because Alfred could not read or write, he misspelled his name when he gave it to the tattoo artist. And so when he got the tattoo, it did not say Alfred for his first name. It said Alfred, Alferd.
Oh,
And from that point on,
the
that was his name.
name he's supposed to get is Alfred, but it's spelled Alfred. What the fuck?
Nobody called him Alfred, they called him Alfred. And so this was kind of embarrassing for him. And then after getting rejected from the military, Alfred had kind of bounced around from one job
Why
to
don't
the
you
next,
just delete
never really
the
putting his roots down,
delete
and never
the
starting a family.
tattoo?
And so again,
You
Israel
can
just
delete
felt
the
like
tattoo
this
and
was a
join the
guy who
military.
needed some
What the
help.
fuck?
And so after Alfred very happily accepted that coffee pot from Israel, he
Military.
in turn reached into his
Military.
jacket and pulled out a flask with some alcohol in it, and he handed it to Israel, almost like a thank you for giving me this warm coffee pot.
Trading? Not
And
thank
the
you.
two
It's
friends walked
trading.
side by side for a while, passing back and forth the flask and the coffee pot. And then by late afternoon that day, when the snow was really starting to come down, the prospector who had volunteered to use his horse to help move some of their supplies, he had finally reached a point where he said, my horse can't go any farther, the weather's too bad. And so he dropped all their supplies, and then he turned and headed back down the trail.
Oh,
And very
okay, you're
likely,
dead.
as these men watched him disappear,
I don't even need to listen. He's fucking dead. There's no way your horse is tired and you go back. It's like twice. It's like twice the string of the horse need to get there. It's suicide, brother. It's suicide.
down the trail, they all had the same thought. I just gotta suck it up for 2 weeks to get through this treacherous journey, and I will get to Breckenridge, and I will become rich.
Real photo of the gold
Thank
ore.
you to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. Taking care of our web.
Thank you. I'm really thank you, but
struggling right now. The trial time from the company BetterHelp for 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp. And get matched with a therapist who will
betterhelp.com/Mrballen.
listen
If
and help.
anyone wants to, you should get it. Real photo of the
2 weeks would pass by,
sun 1
and
month
Alfred,
injury.
Israel, and the other 4 prospectors did not show up at that outpost that Chief Uray had pointed out, which was on the other side of the San Juan.
From what he said, I thought the people who stay is supposed to die, but why is Alfred and the other people not, or maybe die? I don't know. Why? Is it wrong or something? Is it, or did he say it wrong, or did I listen to it wrong?
Mountains. That was going to be their first official stop before they continued the rest of the way to Breckenridge. And then another 2 weeks went by, and still they did not show up at the outpost,
they are dead.
and they didn't
They're
show up at any of the other
skeleton
camps
men
in the surrounding areas. Now, Alfred's big plan for this group was really dependent on the weather holding up. When they left, it was true that the weather was improving.
Yeah.
It was snowing less. But within a couple of days of this group setting off on the trip, those winter storms came back with a vengeance and just dumped snow all over the valley and all across the trail this group would have been on in their attempt to leave.
Okay, they are maybe buried in snow somewhere, I don't know, but hey, do you guys ever thinking, like, what if there was a god of everything, god of wind, god of snow, god of spring, god of everything, and they are residing on our planet, but we just don't know who they are, maybe they don't know who they are too, so we're just in the dark or something, right?
But the only people who knew that these men had...
That's just my theory, though. Don't be a fucking ridiculous. Don't call me ridiculous. I'm not calling you ridiculous. Yeah, we're even.
embarked on this perilous journey was the men themselves, and then also Chief
everything I said.
Other prospectors who had decided to stay in the valley until spring. But even if Chief Uray and those other prospectors knew that Alfred, Israel, and the others were in trouble, they would have no way of helping them or getting to them or even communicating to the outside world. They were completely stuck in the valley and basically couldn't do anything. And so, in short, it appeared that Alfred, Israel, and the other 4 men were totally lost somewhere out in the wild.
No, not totally lost. They are skeleton.
But that would all change on April 16th, 1874, roughly 2 months after Israel, Alfred, and the others had begun what was supposed to be a 2-week-long journey. That morning, a group of officials who manned the outpost that Israel and Alfred and the others were supposed to go to, they were having breakfast in one of the outpost's little log cabins.
Did they
and as they're eating and talking to each other, suddenly from behind them, the door to the cabin flies open, and these officials, they turn around and they see standing in the doorway is this totally disheveled
Not a real
guy
photo
with
of the
long
guy.
hair that's sticking up in the air and a huge bushy beard, and in one hand he's got a rifle, and in the other hand he's got a metal coffee pot.
Wait, what?
His
Got a
eyes were
rifle?
darting like crazy side to side, and he was clearly in shock, and he was trying to speak, but he just couldn't. This man was Alfred, and it was obvious to the officials that this man is in dire need of help. And so without even asking him any questions, they whisked him inside, shut the door, got him some food, got him some water, and immediately Alfred's wolfing down the food as fast as he can until he began vomiting, at which point he apologized profusely and said, I've been starving out in the wild for weeks.
You eat that much,
must have done something to my intestinal tract.
Don't be
totally
obesity.
damaged. But frankly, the officials did not care about the fact that he threw up all over the ground. They were worried this guy was going to die right then and there. And so the officials helped Alfred get cleaned up and put in warm clothes. And then Alfred asked them, do you have any whiskey? I want to kind of warm my body up. And they said, no problem. They handed him some whiskey. And so Alfred
he ran away
and then
with
after
the
that,
whiskey.
It was pretty obvious that Alfred had kind of relaxed a little bit.
Okay,
And then at that
he
point,
didn't run
one of
away.
the officials asked Alfred, what happened to you? As soon as Alfred was asked this question, he shut his eyes and kind of grimaced, like even the thought of what had happened to him was just too painful to think about. But after a moment of silence, Alfred, with his eyes still closed, told the officials that he had been with 5 men and they were trying to...
He's meditating right now. Everyone who doesn't know he's meditating to get information out of his head because he's freezing to death now.
hike their way out of the valley to
After
get
his
to Breckenridge,
after he tell
Colorado
the
to look for
information,
gold.
he's going
But
to
as they were
perish.
hiking this trail, this huge storm came in and made it really hard to navigate the trail they were on. And so the group decided they would actually cut through the San Juan mountain range. The thing Chief Fury said, don't do
Sorry,
that,
the
do
sound
not
effect.
go over the mountains. They decided to do that. But as they were traversing these treacherous mountains, it was clear that Alfred was just not keeping up with the group. And so
Yeah, the guy was
unfortunately, they
lazy
made
in
the
the first
decision
place,
to leave
according
Alfred
to others.
behind to die. And he knew he was being abandoned to die.
Yeah.
And so he had to watch as his 5 friends, disappeared into the snow. But amazingly, Alfred did not die. Instead, he would spend the next nearly 2 months stumbling through the snowy forest, having no idea where he was.
So from what I know, the guy who abandoned them is the one who's dead, and the guy who got abandoned is the one who's alive. What a fucking miracle!
Going, eating roots and flowers and looking for shelter any chance he got. But the thing that really allowed him to survive out in the wild was when he was abandoned by the 5 others, he was in possession of that coffee pot that had the coals inside of it. And so at night, he was able to start fires. And then
How
also
can he
at one
eat
point,
though?
he was so hungry that he cooked
Yeah.
his leather shoes in the fire and ate them.
Jeez.
Because again, this guy is starving. And so really,
I mean, I would even do more than that. There's a tree, a Christmas tree, or maybe Christmas tree, or maybe not. But there's a tree that has vitamin D, right? It's a tree that has vitamin of meat. So wait, is it true? Vitamin D is meat? I don't know, but it has vitamin. So we just cooked it out and eat and drink the water and done. It's okay.
he was on the brink of death when he randomly stumbled into this outpost and found this cabin. After Alfred finished telling his story, the officials were just totally shocked and silent, and Alfred eventually would ask them a question. He would say, "Have any of my men come through here? Did anybody else survive?" And they would say, "No, it's only you. We have not seen anybody else." Now, the officials did not send out a search party right away, mostly because it seemed kind of obvious that Alfred's men were likely dead by this point. It's
Yeah.
been 2 months since they started that journey.
Yeah, or
the
maybe,
chances are just not good that
or maybe they just lost the way, just like Alfred. I don't know.
they survived.
We
But
don't
even
know.
if these other men were not dead yet, the officials had no idea where to begin their search. They knew that if they actually wanted to go looking for these guys,
And also, the local said you are all going to die, but maybe not all, maybe not you. It's the people who reside there. I don't know, are going to die, but it's not. Alfred is alive.
they would need Alfred to lead the search because he's the only one who knows where they could be. But
Colorado
Alfred was
State
not
also.
healthy enough to go out in the wild and lead a search. And so for several weeks,
There's
Alfred
no
just
way a
stayed
guy
in
who
the
almost
outpost,
died
resting and
have energy
recovering.
to
And then
lead
finally,
the
when he
search.
was healthy enough, he would go out and lead a search party to
Oh,
go find the missing
brave
men.
boy.
But unfortunately, he couldn't
Ah,
find
okay.
anything. And so it wasn't until that summer, when all the snow had finally melted, that the mystery was finally
So
solved about what happened to those other men. On
he
August
got
20th,
eaten up. Oh,
1874,
sorry.
a traveling artist
I'm
named
just
John
joking,
Randolph
bro.
was hiking through a forest in western Colorado, roughly in the area where those other prospectors would have been walking on their attempt to
Oh,
leave the
damn it.
valley. And as John Randolph was walking through that area, he began smelling this horrible smell. And so
Okay, it's a
John
fucking
followed the
corpse.
smell until it brought him to this clearing, and then in the clearing was what looked like an old beat-up campsite. And
No,
so,
it's
being
not.
curious, John
Jesus.
walked into the clearing to see
Shut up
who
with
was in
that.
this
Shut up, Daniel.
campsite. But when he
Okay.
turned the corner and saw what was on the ground in the middle of this campsite, he froze. Because on the ground in the middle of this campsite were 5 dead men, all lying perfectly
Jesus! Real artist sketch of the scene. Real artist sketch. I
in
don't
a
want
row.
to see
They
it
were the source
anymore,
of the terrible smell.
damn.
And right away, even though John was in shock from what he's seeing, he could tell that these 5 men did not die from something natural.
Wait,
One
what?
guy was missing his head altogether,
Yeah.
and the other 4 had obvious signs
Yeah, from what I see. Yeah.
signs of something being smashed really hard, probably repeatedly, into their heads. But that wasn't all. The
Ooh.
other thing John immediately noticed is that the 5 bodies were in very different states of decay. 2 of the bodies were basically skeletons, but the other 3 were not. They were basically intact. Their chests had been cut and flayed open, but they all looked like they had died somewhat recently. In fact, one of the
What the
men looked so
fuck?
lively that it seemed like he was just sleeping, despite the gaping wound in his chest and his head that clearly indicated he was dead. Now, John wanted to turn and run away, but he had this morbid curiosity. He wanted to know what
The
he was
name is John Randolph.
even looking at. What happened to these guys? And so, kind of against his better judgment, he walked a little bit closer to the bodies. And when he got close enough, he noticed something else that was totally off about the scene.
Okay.
When he was looking down at these men, he could tell that the wounds they had sustained, especially in their chest, looked surgical, like whoever had wounded them, whoever had cut them, had done so with an incredible amount of
SCP, I don't
precision.
know.
This was not random hacks that got these guys killed. This was like a
Ooh.
butcher carving up meat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When he said there's a guy who almost seems like sleeping, I think something was off there. There's no way when you're getting hurt you don't know anything. Maybe he's dead even before he got caught up.
And then John happened to look up from these 5 bodies, and he noticed just a little ways away was the remains of a burned out fire pit. And then there was a trail that kind of led off into the woods behind the fire. And so again, John, he wants to run, but he can't help but be really curious. And so he
Don't
walked
be
past the
fucking
bodies, he went to the fire
curious.
pit, and he
You wanna
followed that
die or
trail kind
something?
of back into the woods, and he found this ramshackle shelter kind of tucked away in the woods that was abandoned. No one was in there,
Okay,
but it had
okay.
all the signs of someone living here for a pretty long period of time. And then suddenly, it was like all these pieces came together, and John realized what he had just stumbled on.
What?
Clearly, those 5 men had been murdered, and the person who murdered them very likely lived in this camp. And over the course of what looks like weeks or
Wait, is it really a person? Why would you just said a person so easily? Or maybe is it like an evil not an evil spirit. Because spirit don't can't do that. And also, it may be not even a fucking person.
months, this person was butchering these men and then cooking their body parts over that fire and eating them.
Oh
This
shit.
is like a cannibal
Oh
camp.
shit.
And John, he's thinking, is this guy going to come back? Whoever lives here, are they coming back soon? He didn't know. And so, kind of in a panic, he pulled out a sketchbook, he sketched the area, and then he turned and sprinted out of there to go find help. It would turn out John, the illustrator, was totally correct about what he thought was happening at that camp.
Wait,
After Alfred was
100%
left behind
correct?
to die, those 5 other men carried on into the night up into the mountains, and then somebody attacked them, began killing them, and
somebody
eating them.
again.
And that person was Alfred. That was why Alfred had survived for so long. It wasn't just that he was able to make fires.
Wait, what a fucking twist. Wait, that's a big twist. Oh my god. Oh my gosh.
Night. It was that he was able to make fires at night and eat his friends. Now, no one has ever been able to actually determine how Alfred went about killing these 5 men, or even
How or there's gotta be an evidence. There's gotta be an evidence.
when he killed these 5 men. All we know is that based on the investigation, 4 of his victims appeared to have been asleep when they were murdered. But the 5th victim, who actually was Israel, the one guy who really liked Alfred and looked out for him and was kind of like a father figure to him, he was the only one who showed signs of a big struggle before he was murdered. While Alfred denied killing all 5 of the men, he said that he basically only killed
Wow, the guy denied kill all 5. Wow, what a twist.
of them, and it was self-defense. 5 of the men, he said that he basically only killed one of them, and it was self-defense, and somebody else killed the other 4. It was kind of confusing. Despite those claims he had, the one thing Alfred never denied was the cannibalism. In fact, Alfred straight up told authorities that he grew to really like the taste of human meat. In fact, when they searched that campsite,
So the local doesn't worry about monster in the first place. The local worry about them doing this kind of thing on their own then.
site that John Randolph found, they would find the remains of a dead deer that was right near the campsite. But despite it being right there, Alfred never attempted to carve it up and eat it. He just
What?
kept going back to his stockpile of human meat and eating that. In the end, Alfred was convicted of murder and he was sentenced to
Jeez.
40 years in prison. But in 1901, when he was 92 years old, he was granted parole, and right away, Alfred became a vegetarian and then died a few years later.
Wow, even guys like these get out of jail. What a twist.
From the 1800s all the way through the 1900s, Bodmin's St. Lawrence Hospital was one of the largest running asylums in all of England. But in 2002, it was permanently shut down due to
Why?
so many accusations of patient mistreatment. Now, after it was shut down, the property kind of fell into disrepair. It was basically abandoned. And so when it became totally overgrown, it began attracting vandals and urban explorers. And so the owners of the property finally just put up a fence all the way around the hospital,
Jeez.
and they hired security guards to patrol
Real
the property
photo
at
too.
night to keep vandals out. And so these security guards began doing that, and very quickly they began reporting that they were seeing and hearing things they couldn't explain on this property. They'd hear things like footsteps on
Just easily explain. It's a fucking hospital. Is there going to be something like that? Ask any hospital and they will answer you. Oh, maybe they didn't answer. They just, oh, maybe there's some people out there. But 100% there's going to be a fucking ghost or spirit living in there. Trust me, bro.
floors that they knew were vacant, or they'd hear doors slamming, and at least one guard claimed to have seen a gurney roll into the hallway
Oh
from the
shit,
room,
don't
but then when
show
he
that
checked the
kind of
room, there was
picture.
nobody in there. But perhaps the scariest account came from a security guard who, when he showed up for work that night, he was feeling kind of sick. And so when he was out walking the property, he found somewhere to lay down in one of the smaller hospital buildings. And as he was laying there with his eyes closed, he
Okay.
began hearing a tapping sound coming from outside. And so he stood up and he walked over to the window and he looked out into the night, but he couldn't see anything out there that would cause this tapping sound. And so he shrugged and turned back around to go lay down again.
Okay.
But when he turned around, standing in this room
Oh,
with him
what
was
the
this
fuck?
skinny woman wearing a white hospital
Why the
gown.
fuck would you
And
show
she had
that?
this grimy black
Okay,
hair
Daniel.
that was covering
Okay.
her face. And so the security guard is just staring at her, totally
Oh,
terrified.
why the fuck
And
would you
before he
show
could do
that
anything,
picture
this
anyway?
woman just turns and walks into a wall and vanishes. To hear the full
Oh,
terrifying
thank
story,
God.
check out the latest episode on our newest Mrballen Studios podcast called
Bedtime Stories.
This episode is called Night Shift, and if you want more
Yes.
episodes like this, Bedtime Stories releases new episodes every
Oh,
Wednesday,
there's
and they're
a.
available on
Okay,
all
okay,
podcast
okay.
platforms. So that's going
Jeez.
to do it. If you got something out of
Why the fuck would you show that picture anyway? There's supposed to be a picture like that. And yeah, it is scary. Hospital is scary. For those who wondering, hospital is a fucking scary place, okay? There is no way hospital doesn't scary. Hospital is the place people die the most. It's not grave, okay? Grave is people is there are most corpses in the world are in grave. But hospital are when people die, okay? Or when people losing their life, sorry. And that's the place where you think doesn't have ghosts, you think doesn't have spirit. Okay, brother. Even if it's a small chance that there's there's going to be a place that doesn't have ghosts or spirit, I won't fucking sleep in there. Promise me that. If there was a bad like, oh, maybe you're a patient, you're a VIP patient, you get one bed on your own. Fuck no. I would sleep in public, okay? I would sleep in public. I rest I rest risk a chance of being assassinated more than a fucking ghost. I hate ghosts. I hate it more than being assassinated, okay? So it's cool. It's cool for people who love to explore the fucking ghosts in the hospital. Do it yourself. Brother. You're going to need a fucking flashlight, an aid, and a survival kit at the very least. For me, I don't need them because I don't want to go anyway. If I have money, if I fall ill, I would fucking ask the the doctor to come over. I won't go there, okay? I won't go there. Ah, shit. And yeah, it's a great video. Also, we just live 35 minutes. Maybe it's already been 4 hours today, but I don't know, I forgot. I hope it's 4 hour. And yeah, that's about it. See ya, guy.